Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here and welcome back to another Division video. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at your agent. Well, technically speaking, it's my agent, or it was at least at the event, but you get the idea. If you open up your inventory, you are greeted by a wall of information. At the top, you have various tabs, some of which you'll already be familiar with, others you may not have seen yet. Below that, you have your attributes, which ultimately determine what sort of agent you are. And on the main screen, you have a ton of gear, some of which we'll talk about in this video, some I'll cover next week. In short, there's a lot to talk about, and I'm going to break it all down for you and tell you everything you need to know. So if you do enjoy this video and you do find it helpful, as always, a like would be massively appreciated. It really does help me out, helps out the video, all that good stuff. But let's get started. I'm actually going to work backwards here because the other tabs are quite easy to explain, whereas there's a lot more to talk about in the overview tab. So firstly, you should be familiar with the appearance tab. I covered this in my cosmetic gear video, so if you missed that, I'll link that down below. But in short, this is where you pick and choose and change your appearance-based gear to alter the way your agent looks without altering your stats. The pouches tab, on the other hand, is where you store items that don't go in your main inventory. And by main inventory, I mean if we jump back to the overview tab, down here is the space you have in your bag. This increases with bigger and better bags, but this solely reflects things like gear and weapons in your bag as opposed to the stuff you find in your pouches. In your pouches, you store different types of grenades, consumables, ammunition, keys, medkits, and of course, crafting materials. If we take a super quick look at these, your different types of grenades are EMP, flashbang, frag, my personal favourite, incendiary grenades, and you also have shock and tear gas. Under the consumable side of things, you have canned food, which increases healing effects by 40% for 30 seconds, energy bars, which remove negative status effects and protect you from further status effects for 5 seconds, water, which increases the damage you deal to elite enemies by 20% for 30 seconds. Soda, which reduces cooldowns on skills by 30% for 30 seconds. And finally, incendiary and explosive bullets. And I'm sure you can work out what they do. Ammunition just covers the 6 types of weapons available. That's assault rifles, LMGs, marksman rifles, pistols, which have infinite ammo, shotguns, and SMGs. Crafting materials, you've seen this before in my crafting video. Medkits are of course for healing you in combat. And finally, access keys. There are 2 types of these. Lockpicks are used to open locked doors that you might find around the world whilst exploring, say, abandoned buildings. And Dark Zone keys are dropped when you kill enemies and players in the Dark Zone. These are used to open Dark Zone chests, which invariably contain some pretty nice loot and a good deal of cash. During the alpha, and in fact this is probably something that you guys are going to want to do in the beta as well, I used to farm keys and open chests as a quick and easy way to get money. You tend to get around 1,000 to 1,500 Dark Zone credits every time you open a chest, which was pretty nice if you were saving up for a particularly expensive weapon. One thing worth noting, however, is that if you die in the Dark Zone, you also drop some of your Dark Zone keys. I say some, not all. I'm not entirely sure how many you drop to be exact, but to give you an example, whilst I was roaming around with 10, dying made me lose sort of 2 or 3. So that should give you a general idea. Now jumping over to the character tab, this is basically an overview of your character as they currently stand. You have an overview of your attributes at the top, which I'll talk about shortly, your levels and your attribute distribution on the left hand side, and a summary of loads of other player related stuff down the right. Anything from, say, your primary attributes to your current weapon usage and skills, all the way down to things like your survivability. This is basically where you go if you want a breakdown of your agent. But now let's jump back to the main event, the overview tab. There are some pretty big things here, so let's start at the top. These 3 blocks at the top are referred to as your attributes. You have firearms, stamina, and electronics. Firearms is basically your weapon damage, stamina is your health, and electronics are your skill power. Stamina is the easiest one to explain. The more stamina you have, the more health you have. Simple, the more health you have, the longer you can stay alive. You get the idea. Skill power affects your skills in different ways. For example, the pulse skill with increased skill power would pulse further and stay active for longer. Alternatively, if you're using, say, the riot shield, it would take more hits before it was destroyed. Or the healing skill would, say, heal in a bigger radius and give a better quality heal. In short, it improves the effectiveness of your equipped skills. Firearms, on the other hand, increases your weapon damage. See, when you obtain a weapon, it'll have a selection of base stats, typically DPS, RPM and mag, alongside all the things like accuracy, reload speed, range, stability, etc. However, your final DPS value is a combination of both the weapon DPS and your firearm skill. That means if you and your friend had an identical gun, for example, but one of you had a higher firearm skill, despite the fact that you both have the exact same weapon, the person with the higher firearm skill will do more damage. And you're probably now thinking, well, surely I just want to go full of firearms, right? I mean, more damage, be the glass cannon, kill everything quickly, and while yes, that is an option, it's also not the only option. The Division is a classless game, but by that it doesn't mean the notion of classes are gone. It simply means you're free to create them yourself. Sure, going all DPS is an option, but similarly, if you want to go, say, tank, you could boost your stamina and take skills like the riot shield to draw aggro from AI enemies. Similarly, if you wanted to play support, it would be in your interest to take a higher electronics attribute so that your healing was of a much better quality than most others. But whatever you choose to do, the question still remains, how do you change these values? And the answer is not through some sort of skill tree where you spend points every time you level up. The answer is through your gear. See, if you look at any piece of armor, you'll see alongside the armor value and the minor attributes at the bottom, they also have an attribute value up here. Sometimes you'll get a piece of gear that will have 2 attribute numbers, other times it'll only have 1. But it's your combination of gear pieces that ultimately determines the spread of your attribute points. That also means if you want to be that glass cannon and spec for damage, then you're going to need to be on the lookout for damage of firearms gear. However, it's also not as simple as that. See, while yes, there's technically nothing stopping you from going and seeking out nothing but firearms gear and having a ridiculously higher firearm attribute, if you do that, you more than likely won't be getting the most out of your weapons. Sure, your DPS will be higher than most, but DPS isn't the only factor. See, while gear pieces provide you with attribute points, weapons have talents, and talents are unlocked at particular attribute thresholds. Take this SOCOM M1A for example. It has 2 talents, Capable and Toxic. Capable requires that you have 779 in your firearm skill, but as you can see right now, I only have 425. However, Toxic only requires 364, and since I'm above that threshold, Toxic is active, meaning that headshots with this weapon have a 5.5% chance to apply a blind status. Capable, on the other hand, improves the handling of my weapon for 5.5 seconds, so in this case it's not a huge loss, but were that a particularly outstanding perk, I'd most definitely be looking to up my firearms attribute in order to unlock that talent. However, some attributes even require multiple attributes to be above a certain threshold. This MP5ST, for example, the top skill, which I haven't unlocked, requires a firearm value of 779 and an electronics value of 364. So as you can begin to see, getting the perfect setup endgame becomes a bit of a puzzle. You not only want the best weapons and the best gear, but you also want to have the best talents on your weapons and have those talents be active, which also means if you initially wanted to just go all firearms, if you truly want to get the most out of your weapons, then that might not be an option. The rarer the weapon, the more talents it has. The high-end or orange weapons are the rarest ones, and they can have up to 3 talents. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, there's going to be a lot of stuff to balance out, but that's certainly going to make things interesting. And that, my friends, is pretty much it. That was just a quick look at your agent and how everything ties together. Of course, if you guys do have any questions, then by all means let me know down below. But aside from that, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for a brand new Division video. And take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.